Hello and welcome to the D20 Future Show. I am, as always, your host and your GM, Richard. And tonight we have a special guest. This is our first ever live interview. We have Ian Lemke of Green Ronin Games, who is the developer for The Expanse. How are you doing, Ian?
Good. How you doing? I'm glad to be here today.
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. It's we're delighted to have you. So we're going to chat through. Hey, Fisticuffs, welcome back. We're going to chat through the some how to write for the Expanse RPG, and we're going to chat through, in particular, for members of the Facebook group who have been taking part in our OnePageAdventureJam. We're going to be chatting through those adventures, getting Ian's thoughts, and that's what we're doing. If you know nothing about the Expanse RPG. The Expanse RPG, as I've been saying for about 2 months now, is real good. It is absolutely brilliant. I'm not just saying that because Ian's here. It's really, really good. It is a science fiction role-playing game set in the Expanse universe, based on the books, but also, of course, the pretty successful TV show. That's also amazing. And Ian, tell us about your role as head of the Expanse line at Green Ronin.
I just wanted to add to that too that it uses the age system,
Yes.
Green Ronin's age system. So if you're familiar with any of their other games, pretty much the system will come very naturally to you. It has its own little peculiarities, but it's basically the same thing. What do I do? Well, I'm the developer for the Expanse role-playing game. That involves coming up with the concepts for the books, hiring writers to write the books, taking everything that gets written and telling people what needs to be changed and where to go with it, and then taking all of that, putting it into one book, writing any sections that need to be filled in at the end there, and then turning it over to production. At that point, it's pretty much on them. That's not entirely true. I also come up with art concepts and things like that. So, go through, production tells me how many pages, what pages need art and things like that.
Okay.
We go through all of that. So yeah, that's what I do.
Amazing.
We just got out Ships of the Expanse, which I know was frustrating for a lot of people because we'd promised it a long time ago. I promise you, we wanted it out every bit as much as people wanted to see it. The pandemic times made things difficult. Everything across the board was massively slowed down. But it's out, and it's in people's hands, so that's awesome. That we have more books coming out. So
more on that later, hopefully. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to talk about RPG adventure writing. So first, what makes a good RPG adventure in general?
For me, it needs to, in general, it has to be exciting, fun, engaging for the players. It needs to connect with the players in some way. If you run an adventure that the players have no interest in, they're not going to have any fun, no matter how exciting or well-paced it is. But along with that, pacing is very important for me. What do you hit certain beats at certain times? I mean, not that there's any specific model for that, but it shouldn't feel the same the whole way through, at least for me. I mean, that can vary, obviously, but in general. For the Expanse in particular, I want it to feel like the Expanse. I want it to have the social justice aspects of the Expanse, the inequality showing up, the Belters versus the UN versus Mars, all of those themes and such. Not all of them need to be in every adventure, but you want to hit some of those. Those are the big things for me.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to, if you're going to play in the setting of the Expanse, you have to feel like that setting is there in some way, and right. those really big themes are a real core of part of what it is.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Here's a cheeky question, but I have softened you up with it earlier. can you share anything about the future of the Expanse line?
I can share a little bit. We have the next book is in production right now. It's going to be a little while. Again, things are still not moving fast. If you are aware of anything that's going on with shipping and printing and all these things, it's a nightmare out there right now. And companies are dropping dead. Green Ronin's fine, but they're it's affecting all sorts of companies, not just role-playing game companies. But Beyond the Ring is the next book, which is going to be everything Beyond the Ring, Beyond the Ring Gate, which includes the ring space. Go into that, the ring station, Medina station, and then there's a big section on Medina. And then Worlds Beyond the Rings. We do sort of light overviews of the book of the worlds that are mentioned in the books. Those actually have the smallest entries, but then we have larger entries for systems we got to create create ourselves. So there's a whole bunch of completely new worlds and systems and stuff in the book, tons of them. And then we have some cool rules for managing a colony. If you want to do an entire campaign based around having your own colony and how it's doing, and then if something goes wrong, then that could be resolved either through dice rolls or an adventure that the GM comes up with or what have you. And then of course rules for creating your own systems as well. Just if you want to create a bunch of random systems for people, and roll a bunch of dice or just choose stuff off the charts.
Excellent, exciting stuff. So so plenty of life in the Expanse line.
We have more books coming beyond that. In fact, we have stuff has been written already for books beyond that. There's a lot of things I want to get into, and the timeline is sort of going to keep progressing with each book. One of the things that's been is dealt with like once in the novels and such is like cybernetic where implants and things like that, and it's hinted at that there's a lot of that out there, but not much about it, and there's certainly nothing in the core rule set. So I want to get into that a little bit, to give if someone wants, give the game a little bit of cyberpunk flair. Don't want to I don't want it to become about that, but I want that option to be there for people.
Okay, cool, exciting stuff. All right, well let's get into the kind of the meat of today, which is to go through each of the adventures submitted. Bit of I tell you what, while we're talking about it, question from Harold is: are there any pre-made adventures? So Green Ronin official adventures coming?
Yes, we have a PDF adventure coming out.
Okay.
So hopefully, Secrets of Lemuria. Hopefully that will be out shortly. As far as that, I hope to do some additional PDF adventures as well. Beyond the Ring has a ton of story hooks. Like every world has at least one solid story hook of ideas of things to do with that world and such, and as does the section on Medina Station. There's all kinds of ideas throughout it for here's something you could do on Medina, another thing. So we have lots of story hooks. One adventure. Hopefully more. Again, I had hoped for more of a line of PDF adventures, but with things sort of being slowed down, we have to make choices.
Sure, absolutely. So what can you tell us about Secrets of Lemuria, if anything?
It takes place on Medina Station almost entirely, which is kind of cool. And basically you're dealing with a scientist, trying to track down a scientist who has discovered something interesting on one of the worlds beyond the rings. So that's as much as I want to say about it. But
okay, fair enough. That's
action-packed on Medina Station.
All right. Exciting stuff. Brilliant. There you go, Harold. Good question. Excellent question. Go up a level. So, we're going to talk through a series of adventures that were submitted by the community to the OnePageAdventureJam competition, which was held somewhere between the Expanse RPG Facebook group and the GM's group for the Expanse RPG. Yep. So if you are a member of either of those, hopefully you're aware of this competition. If you are on the GM's group, you can have access to each of those adventures. So they are all uploaded by the people who have written them. Authors, that's what we call them. Submitted by the authors and are uploaded in the file section along with a couple of other things. And I guess, sure, why not an exclusive? I've got some stuff to put up there over the next few months as well. So some little teeny tiny rules modules to give GMs just some tools for when you are surprised. In particular, I have some gambling rules that I'm going to be submitting, which I think might be good. But we'll see. They might be terrible and they might be a complete waste of time. But I have written them and they will go up soon. But we have, I think it's 8 adventures. They are currently, and I've seen the first kind of prototype layouts, they are currently being worked up into a single PDF that will be polished. So that will be available. So if you buy the Expanse RPG, your group will thank you. It's really good. If you do that, you can then have, not only is there a starter adventure in the book and some excellent adventures available, including Abzu's Bounty, which I see behind Ian, and I have yet to read and play, but I'm excited about it. There it is. He's got a hardback version. As a Kickstarter backer, I have the PDF, and I'm looking forward to running it with the D20 Future show. Probably not on this stream, but we'll see. But plugs later. But it will be available, so you could just have 8 one-page RPGs, easy to run, ready to go as soon as you want to start GMing. All of the stuff is there, and we will we'll try and work it up to make them as easy to run as possible. So that's where they'll be. That's where they are if you're a member, or if you want to join the groups now to try and have a look. We will. Audun, I nominate you to be live approving people so you can have a look at these adventures. And we're going to do them in alphabetical order because any other order seems unfair. So we're going to start with Bad Medicine. So Ian, what were your thoughts on Bad Medicine?
Well, I like this one. It's very, very, in many ways, I think it'll be very short and to the point. I think it would be a great complication for an existing adventure, and I'm not going to talk about these in too much detail,
sure.
because we are going. There's the whole thing with us, running one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to give too much away, and for people who might want to play them as well. But anyway, yeah, I think it would be a really great side quest kind of thing. It has a good bit of the social justice thing worked in there, with there's issues with people getting bad drugs, basically, where they're supposed to be the good kind, and
yep.
they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So yeah, there was some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I really liked how kind of straight and to the point it would drag and drop into basically any campaign, which I think is really superb. So it is really short and sweet, but it provides a hook, an ally, potentially some antagonists for your campaign to spiral out to. So I really liked it.
I think that was one of the things I was looking for in these in general, which I realize isn't really part of it, but could this be dropped in any campaign? Could anybody play this? And some of them were good for that. Some of them would be great for a one shot. If you're running a game at a convention or something, but they're very focused of what's going on, and the characters sort of have to be of a certain type. But yeah, this is fantastic for just dropping into anything.
Cool. Next up, our Lord and Master Audun's adventure, A Dance on Saturnian Ice. That is harder to say than I thought when I embarked upon the word Saturnian.
So there was a lot going on in this. I liked it overall. My this was not my only complaint about this one really was it one of the things I sort of, again, another thing I looked at with these is, can I skim this as a one-page adventure and figure out what's going on? Can I just sort of glance at each header and a sentence or so, and there's no way. I had to sit there and go, okay, what's going on in this scene? So that's good and bad. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of skill tests already baked into this for a one-page adventure. So that's kind of cool. I really like the at the end, it actually gave some new equipment and things like that, and actually gave rules for them. So that was kind of neat. Again, this one deals with a disease, which is always terrifying in space and enclosed areas, especially these days.
Yes, yep.
Feeling of what that would be like to be in these enclosed spaces with potentially ill people. So yeah, those are my basic comments on it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the disease was just added a really interesting extra dimension to the story. It provides a sort of ticking clock. So there's that just sort of element of dread, as at any time people your characters could be suffering and starting to take conditions and all that, which I thought made it really interesting.
Yeah, the stuff on the disease was really nice in that I could see one of the characters getting it and dealing with it throughout the adventure,
Yeah.
So that could be or an NPC or something too, but yeah.
Yeah, particularly without sort of KOing them either. I think that's it's I guess it's really tempting to go, this is really serious, so you're dead, which of course is sort of makes sense, but is no fun. If your character dies in the first hour of an adventure, that sucks.
Yep.
So I liked that a lot. Okay. Next up, Demeter Weeps.
Right. So this was interesting. I loved the investigative aspect of it. I also liked that there were described a lot of possible ways of doing it. My only complaint there was that I thought it was a little too vague. In adventures, at least for me, I like to see, okay, this is how to do it, but then here's ideas on how to change it. Rather than, well, you could do this in these 5 different ways. I kind of want a little more guidance than that. Especially for something like this, where I'm, this is gonna, maybe I'm gonna just use real quick because I don't have an adventure planned, and I don't want to have to think about it. But yeah, but I love the investigative aspect of it. I mean, I think a little more in the way of tests and such could have been given here. Especially, I mean, I feel like this is like the perfect opportunity for a challenge test or something. While doing the research, but nobody ever uses challenge tests. It makes me sad.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty similarly. I think the plot's really thematic. I love that it plays with because the guy's a belter and maybe has OPA ties. Then immediately there's suspicion from the crew, and that tension is baked into the adventure, and you can kind of see it. So any belters, particularly if they have OPA ties as part of the party, immediately it starts to prejudice them in the investigation. I guess as a GM, I want a bit more structure than was there. I guess it's difficult because people had basically no context for what an Expanse one-page adventure looks like, so everyone kind of sort of taken whatever approach. It was cool. One of the things I really liked was it went, okay, well, here are 3 different endings depending on how the story turns out, which
Yes.
I think I certainly know that when I'm writing an adventure, I'm very guilty of, well, they all die or you win. And this absolutely didn't do that, but said, okay, well, here's 3 different outcomes depending on what you found out, and only the GM will actually know the truth. But it would kind of lead into other stories with potentially a disgruntled somebody or a company that needs to find a ways of making the insurance money back or whatever. Which was
and you're right. Yeah, the multiple endings was great in that one.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think I need to start doing that. I think
the same problem.
One of the things that I guess, and I realise that this could sound a bit like I'm calling it out, but I think this is something that actually was a bit of a theme through a lot of the adventures, was advanced tests. So I wanted to talk about that so that I can hear it from you how you think they should work. So to explain to anyone watching, although this is pretty impenetrable stuff if you haven't read the adventures, but we'll do our best. So the standard adventure game engine test is like a pretty much any check in a traditional role playing game. You have a target number to hit. In the Expanse, you roll 3d6. You add up the totals, add on to your relevant statistics. You get a target. You get a number. If that reaches or exceeds the target number, you've succeeded. If it doesn't, you've failed. And that's your kind of simple tests. And then, and now I'm not sure which is this new to the Expanse, or has this always been part of the adventure game engine? Okay,
it's part of the.
So you have advanced tests whereby the total on the significant dice, which in the Expanse is called the drama dice, is kept, and you have to reach a number of successes, or not a number of successes, but a total on the drama dice based on your succeeding on the test. And so that's an advanced test, and the way it's baked into a number of these adventures, and Demeter Weeps is one of them, is that it's just sort of said, it's an advanced test, target number 15, drama dice total 20, go. And I feel like there should be something preventing you from keep rolling until you hit the total.
Generally, and they get used incorrectly all the time, like in adventures that people write, and just do that to show, okay, well, because basically each die roll, each test is supposed to be an increment of time. And it's up to the game master what that, to declare what that increment of time is. If you're trying to hack something, it might be 15 minutes or whatever per test, and then it's supposed to determine how long it takes. There should be something pushing back against you, like you only have so long to complete this, or at this amount of time this happens, something happens, like if you're hacking a system, maybe if you're in there for X amount of time, it activates countermeasures or something, and so the difficulty becomes higher, or something like that, or you have this long until the guards show up, they do their next rotation, or and something like that. There should be a penalty, something that occurs, so to create, because the whole idea of that kind of test is to create tension. And if it's just like, okay, keep rolling until you get the number you need, where there's not really any tension at that point.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So as I say,
dead on.
They're just that's always nice to hear. So there were a few people whose adventures didn't have that pushing back or that ticking clock, and that that's something that I think they need. But of course, the thing is, as soon as you introduce one of those, then the players feel under pressure, and suddenly the excitement is kind of ratcheted up, which I think immediately just takes adventures up to another level, which
encourages them to spend fortune points at that point, because like, if they got a 6 on the drama die but the roll's a fail, they'll be like, oh god, okay, I'll spend a few fortune to make it a success.
Absolutely, at the risk of increasing the churn, which We've run a couple of sessions on the D20 Future Show live, and hence the now hashtag that probably will never be trending, but means a lot to us, which is hashtag max the churn, as my players do everything they can to try and max out the churn before the adventure ends.
That's just something I'll say in general about these adventures.
Yeah.
A few of them did include like what happens with the churn, like actually use the churn to great effect. And it's something I'm pushing all my writers going forward to do, is to include that in all of the adventures. Like have basically a churn chart that shows what can, ideas of what can happen based on this adventure using the churn. Because I do find that sometimes if it's just sort of left open, it gets a little bit ignored sometimes, because game masters are a little uncertain what to do with it or what to have happen. But if they're given some guidance, sometimes that can be helpful, or even that can just, seeing that in an adventure can spark something in something you're homebrewed and running on your own.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a little bit of scaffolding on the churn tracker on the. I think it's on the back of one of the millions of bits I got with the Kickstarter. I backed it at as high a level as I could talk myself into, and I've been delighted with everything so far. So. It was a good project to back. So that little bits of scaffolding, but that kind of when you hit churn 10, this thing might happen. When you hit churn, so the churn, for anyone who wasn't aware, goes up to 30. When you hit 30, something really bad happens. That could, in and of itself, be a kind of a very very much an existential threat to the group. Which can kind of take just completely sideswipe the adventure, and try to think of. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So one thing that some people don't even realize is that the idea of the churn actually comes straight from the novels.
Yes.
In fact, there's a novella called The Churn that's about Amos's time in Baltimore, and so that concept, it's built into the world in a way. It's not just something we came up with for the game.
It's very much the idea that space is dangerous.
Things change.
Yeah, and something's going to come apart at some point. So yes, trying to think of something that's. And I get the brilliant thing about it. I guess for me is that as a game master, is I don't feel like I'm cheating the players, because it is baked in. I think there are some systems where you earn permission to do bad stuff and offer it, and then it's offered back. And I sort of think, am I being mean? Am I not being mean enough? I never know. Whereas it's very structured. When you hit 10, it's this. You roll a dice, bad stuff or not. When you hit 20, something bad happens. When you hit 30, something really bad happens. And the more that the players sort of interfere with things by succeeding too well or by spending fortune points, which for anyone who's not familiar, they are like health points, kind of, but not. But you can spend them to manipulate fate. But the more you do it, the more trouble you will be in when the churn turns. So
it is literally fortune in the sense of you're spending it essentially to avoid taking damage, any actual real damage. And if you're out of fortune, then if you get hit, you take real damage. You're actually hurt. And then, or you can spend it to improve your other rolls.
Sure, yeah. So it's what I thought, and I can't remember which adventures did this, but some of them had instead of the kind of a traditional ticking clock, just said, well, at this point in the churn, and I can't remember whether they were the usual 10, 20, 30, or whether it was more granular than that. But at churn 15, this happens.
Right.
I thought
they actually came up with some of their own for it, but which is fine,
Yeah.
But yes, I was just glad to see the churn used at all in an adventure.
Yeah, it was
very cool.
It was interesting. Again, something I should maybe have thought about for my adventure, but
I failed to do it in Abzu's Bounty.
Okay, right. I shall have to remember to think of my own. But yeah, this people use the churn in some interesting ways, which I thought was cool. All right, next one, Errands of Mercy, where the crew travel to a space station where there is a disease, and yeah, the tension between the OPA and the UN is really kind of prominent.
I love this one for it hit so many Expanse themes for me. I mean, it was awesome in that sense. The UN versus OPA, the Belters being, I mean, it had, reminded me a lot of the Anderson Station. There's a lot of callbacks to that, and all of that. I also liked this one didn't so much have the multiple endings in that sense, but it had multiple ways of going about the solution.
Yeah.
Solving the problem, which is really nice, because it was not on track. I didn't feel like it was on track, and I feel like opening it up that way made you realize, okay, there's theoretically even other ways this could be solved other than what's listed here. So yeah, it just very left it very open-ended in how the players solved the problem.
Yeah, and very interestingly, I thought in no way said, well, this is the right way to solve it, this is the good way, this is the bad way. It just went, okay, well, there's a problem, solve it, and you can choose to side with one or the other, and then presumably this creates an antagonist and an ally potentially for future campaigns, which I thought was really cool. Another rules question that this kind of kicked up for me was about using advanced tests, which I think again a few of these did, to persuade characters to change their mind over things.
Yeah,
I wondered. I've kind of wondered aloud. I know I've heard different opinions on it, but I feel like yours might be quite definitive as to whether or not. Sure, I mean it's kind of your job for it to be, isn't it?
It is and it isn't. I will say always that my general philosophy of any game, even games that I created from the ground up, are this is your game now. Play it the way you want to play it. If what I say, once that book is in your hands and you're running it at your table, it's your game. I mean, I'll give my opinion on it, and maybe that has more weight than other things, but it's just a personal philosophy.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the way I would do it, from reading the rules, is I would use the attitude system, and I would start. I have done it in Adventures. Is start the character at one attitude, and then set a target number to shift by an attitude, and give them, or whether it's a certain number of time, and maybe that's actually just an advanced test in disguise with fluffier words, but
it kind of is. I mean, if you're going to actually make it an advanced test, though, like we talked about before, there should be either some kind of ticking clock, or something should happen each time that you don't get there, or I don't know. There should be something else pushing back on it, and if there's not that, then just go straight with the attitude rules as they are. There's no real reason to make it an advanced test, but at least it is kind of a disguised advanced test.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I really liked in particular the way that this lent into the themes and the tensions that are there in the story.
Yep.
Which I thought was cool. Excellent. Okay, moving on, we come to Fragile Cargo, which is a kind of heist plot.
Yes, I'm just trying to remember this one. Here we go. It was a great heist. It was very short in a sense, I feel like. And the problem I had here, it's not really a problem because there were no guidelines set for this. It is not very open in a certain kind of way. This is there are certain kinds of characters that are going to be willing to do this. So it'd be great for a one-shot, convention game. Might not insert into a campaign quite as well, and if your group isn't a group that would want to do this, or be willing to do this, though you could maybe force it a little bit by having, if they owe someone big or something, it could be done that way. Yeah, that was, I believe, most of my comments on it. It was, I thought it was a little easy too. I feel like for a heist, maybe there should have been a little more complexity to it.
Yeah, yeah, it seemed to me that the challenge was maybe a bit low. Just each step seemed a bit easy. And I guess my other thought is it does rely on the PCs having a ship capable of carrying out that ambush.
Yep. Which could
Which-
be loaned to them. But,
Yeah,
you know.
but I guess if I was running as a GM, I'd really want us to be told use this ship,
Sure.
because I think just if it included the PCs are loaned or the PCs must have this ship or more capable, I think then it it just provides that little bit more support, because if you've got a little ice hauler, you're kind of in trouble. And the sort of you fail before you start, which is is not so good.
I think that goes along with what I was saying. Is it this could be great as a one shot. It doesn't really fit in, like automatically fit into a campaign.
And I think probably if I was working with this, I'd probably put more PCs willing to resist. I did like that when confronted suddenly with a bunch of armed lunatics demanding a thing, quite a few people would just put, I'm not interested in getting killed over this, which I think is maybe unusual in certainly, it kind of the conventional RPG where you'd write, you'd be here's the people you have to eliminate, you fight them, and to have some of them just go no, was interesting.
Very thematic with the Expanse, though. The first book specifically talks about that, in that when ice haulers and such do get pirated, they just surrender. They don't fight. They don't even have defensive weapons because they don't want to risk getting into a fight with a pirate. They just say, okay, take it, go.
So I think I'm cool. Probably I think one of maybe the only adventure that had a space combat in it, which is something that the Expanse does in an interesting way. Now I know Ships of the Expanse kind of expands on the ship combat rules, which I have yet to see, so I don't know how they work. But I've found the ship combat rules allow you to just increase tension and make it feel tense for everybody.
They're very story oriented. It is not a combat simulator.
No, absolutely not.
This is far from that, as you can imagine. It's really meant to just be another part of the story, not a combat simulator. And I know that's frustrates some people because the Expanse is so technical in some ways. But yet, when you look at what's available in the novels, there really isn't a lot. It's actually very vague a lot of the times as to how things actually work. Things that we see function within standard physics and such, but we don't see a lot of detail in different types of weapons and things like that. Certainly there are different types of PDC guns. There are different sizes of rail guns, but it's not really gotten into any details in the novels, and ultimately it's not important to the stories.
Sure.
If you want to do that, you can detail that out more. But it's just like hand-to-hand combat, it's pistol rifle, you can put modifiers on those, but essentially it's pistol and rifle. Now for your campaign, if you want to come up with a whole bunch of named weapons and such, have at and give them different modifiers and such, but that's not what this game is about. It's about telling cool, more interpersonal stories than it being about the weapons.
Once again, plugging the Facebook groups. I'm pretty sure on one or the other of the groups there are some expanded, statted out weapons to give you more if that's interesting. If that's where you want to go, and I can see over a campaign, pistol, rifle, it maybe doesn't feel like enough. But again, the books very seldom talk about the nature of the gun that Amos is holding, just that it's big usually, and that's pretty much all you get. So they don't get too bogged down in a lot of those technicalities. Cool. Okay. As we move on, this one was interesting, different. This is Sorry, when I said interesting, that maybe sounds like that's an interesting outfit. No, this was a really interesting adventure. This is Hanging for Dear Life.
Yep.
Which let me so this is sorry, I feel like I should give some context. We've got a question from Arkady Vakon. If I'm anywhere close, I think I deserve points for that. We have talked through 5 of the 8 adventures. So we have 3 more. One of which is Hanging for Dear Life, in which the PCs, who I always refer to as the crew when I write my adventures. I don't know if that's a good way of doing it. It's just what I do. The crew get involved in some gangsters who are into extreme sports, involving a high wire exchange of goods and/or people, with a final sequence that perhaps we should dance around, but a really interesting final sequence.
This adventure had the feeling of an action movie for me.
Yeah.
I mean, very much. I mean, even more so than like a typical Expanse whatever. But I mean, it felt like, you know, a summer blockbuster action film. It could certainly be expanded into that. Some very unique takes on some things. I don't want to say too much because it gives away some of the core stuff. But
yeah,
but there's some extreme sports going on. Let's put it that way. That could make for a lot of fun. I think some of the details could be worked out a little bit better, but I liked a lot of what was going on here. It was fun. This
one asks for a lot of roles. And I wonder whether that's just it's providing a lot of structure, and I guess I would have to run it to work out how much that's getting in the way of my GMing and how much that's just making my life really easy, and I'm not sure, but it asks for more roles than most of the adventures.
Yeah, which I'm with you there. It's good and bad. On one hand, and I find this whenever publishing an adventure of any sort, whether for the Expanse or another game, you put too many roles in, then you get complaints of there's too many roles in this. It's full of roles, and then if you pull back, sometimes well, what do you roll for this? And then you go these questions of, well, what should be the difficulty to do this, or so yeah, it's a balancing act, and I'm not gonna, I wouldn't mark it down for that. It did suffer a little bit just as a one-page adventure, and again, this is just me. In that when I first doing the initial top-level glance on it, I really couldn't tell what was going on. I was like, what? Once I got into it, it was great, but yeah, it's a lot of fun stuff. I don't want to give away, but I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just remind myself of. So, yeah, there was. I think this is an adventure that would really benefit from being turned into a 3 or 4 page adventure rather than a 1 page, because there's, in particular, the final sequence, which we've decided not to spoil. So if you want to know how it turns out, either persuade your GM to run it or join the GM's group, but only do that if you're a GM. You shouldn't be allowed otherwise, because you ruin it for us GMs who have to think of our ideas. But the final sequence is essentially a completely new set of mechanics, which, with some high stakes, which it is. I think if it was explained in more space, would be less intimidating as a GM, but it's a really cool idea. I think the person needs to the author, who I can probably the author needs to decide whether it's inside or outside, because of Martian atmosphere being nothing. But on the other hand, really cool. My one genuine complaint is that there is a section whereby they enter an enclosed capsule, and it says, if this is how to get rid of any NPCs who might want to get on board. And I think it would be much better if there was a lovely couple who were just there as sightseers while all of this context happened. I think it would allow you to provide some context, just to really highlight how horrible and unpleasant what's going on is if Glenda and Bill, who are just there on their second honeymoon to celebrate their retirement, had to experience it. But maybe that's just my horrible GMing style. I don't know.
I love it. I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree with you too. I think probably some of these, some of the tests for a one page could have been pulled out in exchange for a little more description. That would have been a better balance for a one page. But and this is one that does bring up the churn too, though. So that was nice.
Yes, absolutely. But the ambition of the final sequence is definitely huge. I think I'd need to dig into a little bit more to decide whether or not it was going to kill some of the PCs, but I feel like it might.
It might. Definitely watch Point Break.
Yeah.
That's the movie that came to mind right
off. For me, there is
too much.
Likewise, there is a story that if a new writer is signed on to be part of the Mission Impossible films, it takes them a certain amount of time to suggest this sequence for Tom Cruise. But of course, Tom Cruise actually does all the sequences in the Mission Impossible films, and he is, it would seem, totally insane, but not that insane, and he will not get involved in this action sequence. So there you go. It's crazier than going to space, which I think has happened in a Mission Impossible film. I don't think we can set it up anymore. It's cool. Okay, penultimately, mine, in which the crew are hired to escort a troubled teen to a behaviour modification facility on Mars. And a very brief plug, available on our YouTube channel, is me GMing for the D20 Future Show cast as they play through Teen Trouble. So if you've been watching for the last couple of weeks, Fishty Cuffs, D20 George and Purple Gorilla will know all about this adventure. So other than that, I think it's pretty good, but now I'm nervous because an actual professional is going to share his opinion.
So, okay, my blunt feedback on it. One, it was laid out really nicely. The thing I keep bringing up is I was able to read through it quickly and catch what was going on, which was really nice. The story is very simple. It could be fit into any campaign pretty much. There might be some PCs who would hesitate at doing this job, but overall it could fit into most campaigns. I love the sort of mundanity of it, and that it's sort of it's very very simple what you're doing. I mean, the setup I feel I can give away because it's
sure.
Which is basically you're kidnapping a student for rich parents to take him off to a boarding school, basically.
A tough love based boarding school. Yeah,
tough love based boarding, and he's a real brat. And you actually go through the process of kidnapping him initially. Which is great. And then I see a lot of this story being able to expand this thing out because there's actually a random chart for the kid's behavior, which is fantastic.
That felt like a real light bulb moment when I was like, this isn't fun yet, and then I had the idea of a random, and then it's fun to GM because you don't know how he's going to behave from scene to scene either.
Yeah, running this would be the one thing I would have brought in is the interludes here, because it seems like it would be great for running a few interlude scenes on board the ship,
Yeah.
And I love the twist at the end. My only criticism there at all would be that I felt like, I don't know, the twist sort of came almost too fast, and I didn't feel a lot of emotional stakes with it, especially since you might hate the kid by the time the twist happens. So I don't know that I felt like the ending needed a little bit of something, but overall good solid adventure.
Thank you very much. You say that some crews would hesitate to do the job. Not even a second's hesitation.
Most PC groups probably not, but I actually know some that probably were like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, to a certain extent, my group are very used to flexible morality, but also, if you're running it as a one shot, it's very much here's the adventure, guys. You have to go this way, which there was as the twist came, that there was a fair amount of vacillation as to whether or not they wanted to engage in that final sequence, which is a shame because that's the climax of the story. But okay.
I mean, ultimately, you'd probably want to do it. They'd probably, if they're that morally flexible to begin with, they're going to want the extra pay. So
it took D20 George maybe 30 seconds to go, we're this kid's only hope. His parents will pay lots more money, which I had to very quickly trying to find some way of bracketing it, because yes, they saw it as an extortion opportunity, which wasn't quite the idea. George says less than 30 seconds to decide that this was an opportunity for extortion.
It's certainly set up for it.
Yes, I need to. That's another thing where I just need a little bit of structure to assume that the guys aren't bleeding heart pirates.
And why playtesting is so important. Oh my god!
Yes.
I mean, I now playtest all of my adventures for anything, at least once, usually twice, because there's always something, that you go, oh, couldn't expect that to happen.
Yeah, and yes, without wishing to put anything on rails, you also don't want things completely derailed.
Or at least to have the sidebar where you say, if this happens, here's what you can do. That's how to bring it, or at least deal with it.
Sure. Cool. Okay, so finally, without wishing to give too much away, saving a really good one for last, is Zakiyah Cries.
I love this one. I have to say.
This one was pretty good.
It hit all the beats for me. It had a lot of Expanse stuff, a lot of good Expanse themes going on here. It brought in the horror aspect of the Expanse, which to me, it varies novel to novel, but especially the first novel was very much a horror book as well, or novel as well. And it definitely has that creepy space stations. I was able to catch what was going on very quickly, skimming it over, despite it being in very densely packed small font. It had, I don't want to give away too much, but it went a little beyond the typical Expanse universe into some areas that haven't really been explored in the Expanse, but certainly fit within the Expanse universe. And that's always a difficulty for me, because Ty Frank reads over everything we do, and so anything new we do, he has to approve. And it's his and Daniel's baby.
Sure.
and so we don't want to go too far outside their framework. But I do like to push that envelope from time to time and see where we can fill in the gaps of things that certainly are out there but haven't been talked about in the novels. It was well paced, I felt. It pretty much had everything I was looking for.
It's pretty good. I think the sort of extra element, if it turned up in an Expanse novel, no one would go, well, that's not the Expanse, in a way that if someone started to produce laser guns or I'm trying to think of another, let's stick with that. That was a good one, Richard. You thought of one thing. If someone starts shooting up people with laser guns, you'd go, well, that's not the Expanse. This, without wishing to spoil it, because GMs, you should absolutely run this one for your players. It doesn't feel out of place. I like the idea that it creates something that would affect further stories, which is interesting. I have written here in my notes my favourite, which is an utter betrayal of the one that I wrote, but never mind. yeah, really just fantastic opportunity to play up kind of the horror side of it, which is there. I think this is another one where actually this would really benefit from being a 3 or 4 page adventure rather than a 1 page. I found myself confusing some of the NPCs.
Yes.
Just the names were too similar, and if I was to run it, I'd write out little idiots guides for me, and it wouldn't be a problem. But there was a lot of stuff, particularly in the kind of the second half, densely packed into a small space.
Yes, that was certainly my biggest complaint was there are actually 3 names that all start with the same 2 letters that are not common, not terribly commonly seen, at least not in Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets a little. What am I reading? But that can be fixed and dealt with in any number of ways. Like you said, write yourself out a little thing. But I'd be concerned about that a little bit for the players too, because you want information to be clear for the players and to understand what's going on. So that would be my only advice, maybe to the writer, that there might be more depth to that I'm not getting, that I'm not aware of. That there might be reasons for these names, which is something I'd want to look into.
Yeah, I mean, at least one name that there was a specific reason why it is used.
Right.
But yeah, there is some cultural stuff that I do not have access to going on. But for an audience who is also not keyed into that, it just a little bit of a little bit more variety with the letters. That's a good point. A bit like when my parents watch a film in which the 2 leads are both blonde women, they are utterly confused because the people look too similar. Just if one's a brunette and one's a blonde, that's it. That's enough, and they are not confused. But my
short
parents,
hair and long hair.
something. My parents both Cambridge graduates, so not thick, but yeah, just a little bit more scaffolding to help differentiate things would really help. But this was cool. There was a lot of detail, so that if things went off-piste, you had that structure there as well, which I really liked.
Threw in the churn too. Use the churn as well.
And use the churn. So very, very good. There is a question about whether or not this will be available later. Yes, I'm going to put this. So the VOD will be available on our Twitch channel. I'm going to put it up on YouTube as well, and drop it into the his graphics. You're not allowed to post links in the chat. So I don't know what the clue you were referring to was, but yeah, we don't allow that to prevent bots from flooding our thing with links to spam. But so this will go up on YouTube. You could be watching me explain that it's going to go up on YouTube. On the D20 Future Show channel, I'm also going to put it in the Expanse group. I shall also put it on the Expanse Discord, the Green Ronin age-appropriate Discord. So if you're watching this and you are plugged in one of those, his graphics is explaining the etymology of one of the names. If those were linked in some way from the adventure, that would be cool. His graphics, if you are the person who wrote Zakiyah Cries, nice job. It's really good.
Yep.
So yes, this will be available afterwards in all of the places I can put it. So you will have this information. Cool. So we have. I always feel like when I do this kind of thing, we've absolutely blitzed through in about an hour all of those adventures. Do you have any more thoughts, tips, anything that you would like to share, kind of off the back of it? Given that this is the standard of adventure that people are writing.
So. I mean, I kind of went into this probably too earlier, but I sort of came while going through these. I kind of came up with a list of things I look for in an Expanse adventure when things are being pitched to me, or if I've already hired someone to do an adventure and I get it in from them. I want to make sure it hits all these things in some ways. And the first is just the concept. You know, is it interesting? Is it new? You know, I mean, again, the last one we brought there, one of the things that just got me right off the bat is it was something that I had not seen an adventure do yet, or been explored in the Expanse. Innovative, compelling. You know, what pulls me to this adventure? What makes me want to play it? What makes me want to run it? And then themes. You know, does it have the Expanse themes? Because sometimes it can be something really cool, really awesome, but it has nothing to do with the Expanse. It just doesn't feel like part of the Expanse universe. You know, is there good interpersonal relations? Either something between the PCs and the NPCs, or two NPCs that they're that they're observing. It doesn't, you know, that can take place in a lot of different ways, but you know, that's a big part of the Expanse. I mean, it's about people. It's not about spaceships. Ultimately, I mean, it is about spaceships, but it's about people on spaceships.
Yeah, it's about people on spaceships, not about the ships themselves.
Right. Exactly. And you know, the whole social justice thing, which is prevalent throughout the Expanse. I love on Twitter when somebody comes after, you know, Ty or Daniel about, oh, why are you so woke on Twitter or whatever, you know, and their response is inevitably, have you read our books? You know, do you understand what we're writing about? But yeah, current topics, you know, inequality, refugees, water insecurity, all of these things that are brought up over and over and over again in the Expanse. You know, do you touch on something of that somewhere? Again, you don't have to hit all of these things, and you know, but some kind of theme that fits with the Expanse. Clarity. I brought this up numerous times. Is it clear what's going on? From the opening paragraph, do I have some clue? Can I get a grasp of what this adventure is about and what it's going to feel like? And that opening, if you're talking like a multiple page adventure, that opening paragraph is in some ways the most important, because you've got to grab the GM right away. I know when I'm looking through a book of adventures and looking for something to run, you know, I'm reading those, and if it doesn't grab me, I move on to the next, you know. Pacing is important. Do you have a variety of talk scenes versus action scenes? And again, this can vary. You know, you can have an adventure that's action all the way through, but that's more the exception than the rule. In general, you want to look for some good pacing back and forth of what people are doing, as investigations and this and that, and try to think about that when you're doing your adventure. You know, is there an opportunity for some investigation here before it gets to the part where they're fighting people? And finally, use the rules. The Expanse has a lot of cool rule sets that are pretty simple, such as advanced tests and challenge tests. Challenge tests are the one I'm constantly having to tell writers, hey, this is a perfect location for a challenge test. Rather than listing out 20 different tests they have to make during the course of this break-in, you can just do it as a challenge test. And again, it as the Expanse system does often, it sort of abstracts what's going on, so you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of every little detail. But and sort of allow you to resolve a situation with a few tests that the game master can then describe, you know, what happens, or there might be results of, you know, things that happen, negative things that happen if tests are failed, and using the churn and things like that. So yeah, those are pretty much my major points on writing adventures. Should you ever find yourself, you know, writing for me, and I'd say this applies to almost any game. You know, you want to hit the theme of the game. You know, don't do something that's off over here unless you've talked about who you're writing for in advance, and you know, you say, hey, I have this weird idea, you know. But in general, if you want to get accepted, that's the way to go.
All right, brilliant. So we kind of hit the admin phase. Looking at the chat, someone has suggested a Deimos Remnant sourcebook should be our next jam. We all write 300-page sourcebooks, and then we have a vote on the best one of those. But Mick Goblin says he's really excited about Beyond the Ring sourcebook and the Medina Station campaign. So there there is definitely an appetite out there for all of this, which is it's all exciting. I love the Expanse universe. I fell in love with the TV show, and almost immediately went on a podcast to try and explain it, and I think I used about 9 genre in my attempt to explain it. It's just great. I love it. The RPG was, I backed it because I thought there's going to be ideas in there that I can use. Even if I hate it, I can use it in my own campaigns because there'll be space ideas, and we are primarily a science fiction podcast, but it's brilliant.
I backed it even though I was writing for the rulebook. So.
Well, there you go. I the one thing I've not managed to use is this. Viewers, if you're on a big enough screen, you can see in the background I have the GM screen. I've never been able to run it in the flesh. I've only ever run this game online, so I'm really looking forward to plonking that down in front of the D20 Future Show players in D20 Future Towers on my dining room table when I will have enough space to put all my stuff. Because I don't know about you, but GMing online means I haven't got anywhere to put all of my things.
Folding tables. I use little folding.
I'm
surrounded.
This desk just I'm surrounded by stuff and I still can't do everything. But cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the admin, and then, given that we've got a question already in the chat, I guess if you have a question for Ian or for me, but you can ask me anytime, then bang them in the chat, and we will see if Ian is prepared to answer them. He reserves the right to say, "I choose not to answer that." So you will have Mink Goblin has got a question. Anybody else? You have a few minutes to put a question in the chat, and we will put as many of them as we can. But I think we're going to be comfortably done in time for your meeting, Ian. So that's good news. So the one page adventure jam is not quite over. We will now go to a round of voting, which Audun will manage. I think we're still finalising exactly what it's going to look like, but I suspect it will be just a Facebook poll on the GM's group on the Expanse page on Facebook. So read through the adventures, take what Ian has said, or ignore what Ian has said, and vote for the one that you like. But we're going to pick a winner. Once we have a winner through a system to be finalised, we are going to run it on the D20 Future Show live on the Twitch channel. And by we, I mean Ian is going to run it. So Ian, in his role as head of Green Ronin's The Expanse line, is going to run the adventure for you. The author, if you're available for it, we would like to find a way of involving you that isn't just playing, because you know how the story goes. But yeah, we're going to try and find players from the community to play on it. I will manage to wangle my way in somehow because I run the Twitch stream, so you can't stop me really. Ian's going to GM. That's going to be very exciting. That too will be available on VOD and then YouTube if you don't catch it live. But we will see if we can max out the churn with another adventure. So that is the prize. We're really excited that Ian's getting involved. So we're a little while ago, this was just a neat idea we had as moderators. So it has blossomed, which is very exciting.
I'm looking forward to running it. So pick the one that I want to win, though. So
okay, all right.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I think we all agree that my adventure is the best. No, we've run my adventure on the stream, and it was a lot of fun, and is available on YouTube. Cool. So some questions. Here we go. Firstly, from Mick Goblin. If you had one tip to run Abzu's bounty, what would it be? That's an excellent question, because I'm going to do that in the next few months.
Read it all through first. Figure out what you like and what you don't. It is very much designed to be modular in the sense of if you don't want to run a section of it, you don't need to necessarily. There's the first and the last are like, absolutely necessary. The rest of them you could sort of mix and match as you choose. In fact, they were deliberately kind of written that you could pull them and run them as their own adventures. Even you could make minor tweaks to them and do something completely different with them. So yeah, my biggest advice would be to be familiar with it and to make it your own. Don't try to follow the exact path that the adventures dictate, because then you're going to be putting your players on railroads. Let them go off in their own direction if they want. It is easy enough to bring them back around to the final adventure one way or the other. And that said, you're not necessarily wasting things, because if you're running an ongoing campaign, you could theoretically pull one of those adventures that you didn't run and repurpose it a little bit, make it not part of that actual story. So that's my advice.
Awesome, brilliant. Are there any plans for Earth after the asteroid strikes as a source book?
I'm not permitted to give exact details, but I did say earlier that as books go on, it will be progressing the timeline.
So, okay.
Yes.
There you go. Official, exclusive. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Cool. Yeah. I think there's some things there are stories to be told as a result of that, which I think is exciting.
There might be a whole chapter or a good portion of a chapter written on that.
That we can neither confirm
or
nor
might
deny.
Not be.
Yeah, who could possibly say at this stage? Brilliant. Okay, from Hish Graphics, will there be an Outer Planet source book, especially thinking of Uranus and the Oort cloud?
There is more on the Sol system in general to come. Because there is stuff in the core rulebook, but it's kind of vague. I mean, it's not, I want to say vague, but there's limited space.
Yeah.
And there will be more to come on the Sol system in general.
Cool. Okay. Mint Goblin just wants to, adding to his questions, just say thank you so much, Ian, for your feedback on the jam. More thanks from me later. But yeah, that's cool. Thanks for jumping on the chat, Mint Goblin. D20 George has a question. As a player who has never read an Expanse novel or watched the show yet, you fool. What is the best way to play up to the lore of the universe?
Or exactly what that means.
So I think it's lore LORE rather than lore LAW. I think so. What's the best way to kind of play into the universe and the themes?
The themes are about. I mean, the strongest themes I'd say in the Expanse are social tensions between factions. You have the three factions: the OPA, the UN, and Mars, MCR. And so there's a lot of tension between different groups. That's hard to understand unless you have read or seen some of it. You could certainly pick up stuff on the on wikis and such real fast. And as I've talked about, I mean, social issues, a lot of which we deal with today in various ways, are really big in the Expanse. Dealing with inequality, different groups being oppressed or taken advantage of, almost treated like slaves, even though they aren't technically slaves. If you have a group of people on a station and they require water shipments for both drinking and air routinely, and you can withhold their water, they're essentially your slaves. Refugees after various battles and wars, there's a lot of the story set up in the novels and such is the result of people being refugees. And water insecurity is huge because everybody needs water. Again, both to drink and for running ships and for oxygen. Water is absolutely essential. So whoever controls the water has the power.
Okay, I hope that helps, George. I guess the one of the things that I really like about the background is that the OPA is not one thing. It's something I always stress when I'm trying to explain to anyone new to the Expanse world playing the game is there's the OPA and there's the OPA, and something that I don't think we see an enormous amount of, but something I always assume, which is that they hate each other. The kind of more extremist reactionary end of the OPA really doesn't think much of Fred Johnson turning up and trying to pretend that everything's civilized.
Plus, he's an earther too, so
yeah, exactly, and he is a well-waller, and they have no time for him, and that's something that
the OPA is literally Outer Planets Alliance. It's made up of probably hundreds of different factions. There are maybe a dozen large factions, but there are individual stations that are a faction or what have you. So yeah, they don't get along, and they do their best. And there are some people who sort of have claimed leadership, but how much the other factions actually follow them is questionable at times.
Yeah, something that we definitely see that play out in the books. Okay, question from Crembuella, from us, one of our viewers, which is, any plans for the Creator Alliance that was once mentioned?
I am not involved in that directly in any fashion. That's sort of our marketing, social media team and such. So I'm afraid I can't give you an answer on that. Not that I think so.
I think
really don't.
From what I know, which I don't think it's going to be much more than Ian, the Expanse will be excluded from that unless something surprising has happened.
You're right. No, I'm sorry. I was thinking of something else. You're right, because it's a property. We can't be a part of that. I think.
So right now, if you're wanting to write and sell Expanse adventures, you can't do that unless you can track down Daniel and Ty and get them to sign off on it. But I think Green Ronin might come after you if you tried to do that. It would be complicated. However, if you want to produce fan-made content and publish it for free on the GM's group, we'd love you to do it. Some people have, and yeah, it's always cool seeing stuff go up there.
We can't license any fan-made stuff and allow it to be sold because it's a licensed product, for us as well. Because it has to go, like I said, everything that I do has to go through an approval process with Ty, so we can't really do that.
But were Green Ronin to publish an independent science fiction product,
were they to do that? I don't know.
Were they to do that, then potentially, the Creator Alliance stuff, as long as it wasn't too expansy, might be able to be sold through that.
Didn't use terms and words and things. But.
You would have to file the serial numbers off real good. I think it's possible that Teen Trouble might get through. Many of the others wouldn't.
Some of these you could, though. You could certainly just scrub the Expanse stuff off of them.
Cool. All right, I'm just going through more of the questions. So Fishtycuffs has binged the whole all 5 seasons, or the 5 seasons that exist after seeing the adventure run on here. Cool, good choice, Fishtycuffs. Good choice. Now read the books. They're really good. They're even better than the TV show, I think, and they're sufficiently different that you don't know what's going to happen.
I will even say, though, the TV show did a few things better, but Ty and Daniel were involved directly all the way through the TV show, unlike a lot of shows. And even they've said that the TV show, they sort of got to do some things a little differently. But the books do things better too at points. You get to see more what's going on in people's heads and sort of the connections between people and such, which is definitely better in the books.
They are, but the books so far, I've read 3 of them. They are utterly compelling. So read the books. They're really, really good. Adam just says, thanks so much for the feedback. He's been a bit on and off with trouble at his end, but this will be available on the VOD and I'll be posting on the group. George says, "Thank you for your help regarding playing up to the kind of the lore of the Expanse universe." Right. Okay. Yes. Deacon Duster says that he also uses the faction conflict within the OPA as part of his campaigns, which is cool. Mick Goblin, more questions. Is there any plan to bring more Expanse Age content to virtual tabletops?
Yes. That's all I can say.
That's all you can say.
I've been pushing it for a long time, but what I can say is a lot of it is almost there. It's not out yet because the stuff that's going out, they wanted to be good and work. There are we modified them. They were actually originally made by somebody else, but like Roll20, I know actually does have character sheets available that are now a little better than they were before because we went in and tweaked them. But there will be new ones eventually. So yeah, there's a lot of virtual tabletop stuff like right on the edge of happening soon.
Okay, Mink Goblin is happy about that. Deacon Duster asks whether or not any higher resolution images will be available. So I know there's been some feedback on the group regarding Ships of the Expanse. Yes, there will be higher res images for VTT.
I can't give a time frame on it, but I will say yes.
But it will happen. Excellent. Maybe another 30 seconds for a question to come in, because I am now padding for time before we move to our plugs section. Think we've got all the questions we're going to. So, that's just Harold putting the plugs in the chat. Strap in. I tell you what, I'm going to do my plugs, and then we'll close the show with Ian plugging his various things, which, Harold, I have the links to, so I'll drop them in the chat. And thanks Hish Graphics for following. So the D20 Future Show is, you'll be shocked to hear, a show where we play D20 Future. We are an actual play RPG podcast available on all good, neutral, and evil podcast platforms. We are currently coming towards the end of our superhero science fiction campaign set in future Manchester, UK. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms. If you're inspired by this to want to catch up with the show, I recommend you start with an episode a little while ago called The Story So Far, because there's a lot of story so far, and I can't afford the hosting to host all of the episodes. So I would start with that. It drops you in without you having to catch up with 50 episodes. We are coming really close to our climax. For that, I'm hoping to play for the first time in Meat Space, an actual RPG in my dining room with my players for the last session, which will be turned into, I think, several weeks worth of content on the podcast. Then we're going to run Abzu's Bounty, and that is going to be our campaign. So I am super excited. In the meantime, we are a bi-weekly podcast. We're also a bi-weekly Twitch show of some sort. We've been going through a bit of a sort of variety with our actual play stuff. So we've played The Expanse, we've played some D&D, we have played some D20 Future on here. We may play my own game, Fantasy Adventure, which I will continue to plug and then get embarrassed when people actually buy. You can find us on Twitter at D20 Future Show. You can find us on Facebook at the D20 Future Show. You can follow us or even subscribe if you want to be one of our Twitch subscriber legends on twitch.tv/D20 Future Show. That, I think, is all of our plugs. Links are in the chat. So with the last 5 minutes, Ian, plug away.
Well, as you know, I'm the developer for the Expanse role-playing game, so check that out. I wear a lot of hats. That's not all I do. I'm also the developer for another game called Talisman Adventures, fantasy role-playing game, which is based on, if you're familiar with the old Talisman board game from the 80s, which is still going strong. Talisman, the Magical Quest game. It's a game based on that, and it's a completely original rule system and such that was created by me and a few other folks. lots of fun fantasy game. And I'm also currently working on my own role-playing game called Nevermore: Tales of Gothic America, which is going to be basically a Gothic setting, a Victorian era setting game, but set in America on the East Coast. I noticed that was sort of a gap. There's tons of Victorian London, Victorian Europe games, but there's really and Wild West, of course, but there's a lot of Victorian Gothic horror that takes place here on the East Coast of America. So yeah, I'm exploring that and creating my own world with it and having a lot of fun with that. It's going to have an original system, which is actually card based, but that you'll be able to play with regular playing cards. You don't need any special cards or anything. So that's all me. I have a Patreon, which people follow to see what I'm doing. A lot of it's going towards Nevermore these days, because I'm privately, that's what I'm focusing on most. When I can put up other things, Expanse or Talisman related, I do that, but that's a little limited. But
okay. And of course, you have a blog.
Yep.
Which
I guess
is also in the chat.
That's me. Yep.
Excellent. And you can find Ian on Twitter at the Ian Lemke.
Yep. That's me. Because Ian Lemke was taken.
Scumbag. What can you do? Brilliant. Okay. There you go. So, a million things to follow and view. We will be back on Tuesday on the Twitch stream doing something TBC, because it's TBD. We don't know what we're going to do. We might play my brilliant game Fantasy Adventure, but we might do something else. So that's it. I'm rambling and I need to bring this into land. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for getting involved in the chat. Expect to see this up on the Expanse GMs group and the Expanse group really soon. And of course, expect to see the voting system and then the winner of our one-page adventure jam on the GMs group at some point soon. It only remains for me to say thank you so much, Ian, for your time.
I just want to say thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
An absolute
and thanks for
joy.
all the questions.
And yes, thank you everyone. And expect to hear from me as we organise running the winner on Twitch.
All right.
Awesome.
Have a good day then. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's it from me.